The story of the Good Samaritan is one of the best-known gospel stories. So much so that the term Good Samaritan is synonymous with mercy, compassion, and philanthropy. Hospitals with the name Good Samaritan appear throughout the United States. Good Samaritan Downers Grove, Good Samaritan Los Angeles. The Samaritans is also used in philanthropic circles by particularly a national charity of 201 branches in the United Kingdom, the Republic of Ireland, the Channel Islands, the Isle of Man, and the US, dedicated to suicide prevention. In Australia, the Good Samaritan Donkey Sanctuary offers a safe haven where donkeys are welcomed with open arms and surrounded by an environment designed to cater to their specific needs. From veterinary experts to skilled volunteers, the Good Samaritan Donkey Sanctuary ensures that each donkey receives the attention and medical treatment necessary for their physical and emotional well-being, thereby transforming the lives of donkeys that have experienced neglect, abuse, or abandonment. Now, in addition to giving rise to philanthropic institutions, the parable of the Good Shepherd is so well known for its message of aiding the stranger. It has become a staple in political discourse. Former US President George W. Bush invoked the parable in his first inaugural address, saying, "I can pledge our nation to a goal. When we see that wounded traveler on the road to Jericho, we will not pass by on the other side." For President Bush, the parable is about taking care of nations in distress. Queen Elizabeth II remarked in her 2004 Christmas message that the parable is about tolerance and respecting others. She summarizes, "Everyone is our neighbor, no matter what race, creed, or color. The need to look after a fellow human being is far more important than any cultural or religious differences." In 1980, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher claimed nobody would remember the Good Samaritan if he only had good intentions. He had to have money as well. In Sierra Leone, the parable was interpreted as permission to take aid from whoever would offer it, even the enemy. And thus the leaders claimed Jesus gave warrant for his country's acceptance of aid from the Soviet Union. Now that might be a stretch in terms of interpreting the parable, but what it does do, all of this, is it's kind of key us to the fact that the parable can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, depending on the aspect of the parable that we choose to focus on. For instance, sometimes people focus more on the wounded man. However, the standard reading is the one in which we are the Samaritans, helping them, the sick, the poor, foreign nationals, and so on. But you can see it can be viewed from many angles. And I'd like to suggest we consider the innkeeper. The Samaritan's final actions show him providing not one-time aid, but long-term care. Thus, the sense of loving neighbor means continual action, not something to check off a to-do list. The Samaritan's offering to the innkeeper, which amounts to a blank check, fits well within Jesus' overall concern for generosity. Moreover, trusting the innkeeper to care for the wounded man echoes the trust the wounded man must have had to have in the Samaritan to begin with. And by adding that aspect to the story, Jesus is saying trust is essential for life. And I think we'd all agree, trust does support our capacity for neighbor love. To actively love our neighbors, we do have to trust that our love will be received, not rebuffed or abused. Now, in 1969, I went to the Woodstock Music Festival, which remains my one claim to fame. There, we parked far away from the grounds, many, many miles. And for some reason that I no longer can recall at all, mid-afternoon on day 2, I decided to go back to the car to get something. Now, what I could possibly have needed is inconceivable to me because we didn't bring anything. However, I walked back to the car and then back to the festival, arriving around dusk. And so young, what a shock. How was I going to find my friends among the 400,000 people sitting in front of me? As I was scanning the crowd, I was suddenly hoisted onto the shoulders of a Hell's Angel biker. Now, I had not asked for this, nor was I asked if I'd like any help. He just lifted me up onto his shoulders, like a child. Panicked, I asked, or maybe grunted, and he said, "Oh, now you can see better to find your friends." And as I said, I was kind of panicked, but always polite. I said immediately, "Oh, yeah, there they are, thanks so much." And he lowered me down and I scooted away, having no trust in this neighborly gesture. And I so wonder about the innkeeper in the story, who trusted the Samaritan to return and pay for all the care given to the wounded stranger. Unlike me, the innkeeper trusted the goodwill of the Samaritan. Now, how often are our neighborly attempts short-circuited by mistrust, either in giving or receiving? How often have you, or me, considered giving money to a beggar, but refrained for fear that she or he would use it to make their lives worse, maybe to buy drugs? Less dramatically, but perhaps equally often, we wonder about giving money to any charity for fear it will be used unwisely. Giving in love, receiving love, requires a certain amount of trust. But our gospel tells us today we are not trusting in our own judgment or experience. We trust God, who is funding the love activated by neighborliness. We are not in danger of being rejected, for it is not us, but Christ in us, who acts, who loves, who offers care and grace through us. There's a famous literary setup in which a man too shy to propose to his beloved asks a friend to do it for him. The friend who actually proposes has nothing to lose. He's only conveying a message. And that's us too. We are conduits, channels of God's love to God's people. We can give generously without counting the cost, for we are giving God's love. We can receive all we are offered as blessings from God. Our egos, self-esteem, fearful, tender, wounded parts are not at stake, not at risk, when we act lovingly toward our neighbor. Although we can be lessened, shrunken, by calculating too much all the possibilities and consequences of our acts. But as we act in love, receive by love, and live more gently, compassionately, harmoniously, we live as God has designed. Let us go out into the world and spend God's love lavishly to every single one of God's family who are our neighbors.